Hello everyone, and welcome to the Archaeo-Heritage Film Festival. My name is Steven Sloss, and I'm a writer and presenter specialising in Japanese giant monster movies and related films, which is why I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Gorgo today. Happily, 2026 marks Gorgo's 65th anniversary, and I hope this screening here today in Bath is the first of many celebrations of this sadly underseen creature feature that we'll see throughout the year. Now, Gorgo was produced by King Brothers Productions, who in 1957 had seen great financial success handling US distribution for Rodan, a Japanese giant monster picture from the same studio and creative team as the original Godzilla. King Brothers felt that they could replicate the financial success of Rodan with their own self-produced giant monster film. To this end, they sought a co-production deal with an unspecified Japanese film studio, which would have set the film in Japan. This didn't come to fruition, however, and the setting was changed to Paris. This setting also fell through, however, when it was pointed out that Paris is in fact very far inland, making it unlikely that a sea monster could reach such a location undetected. A deal was eventually struck to produce Gorgo at MGM's British studios in Hertfordshire, which placed the film's action across the UK and Ireland. The film was directed by the Ukrainian-born French filmmaker Eugene Leurier, who already had significant experience wrangling giant monsters, having previously directed Behemoth the Sea Monster, The Colossus of New York, and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which famously featured stop-motion animation by Ray Harryhausen. Coincidentally, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was based on Ray Bradbury's short story The Foghorn, which, like Gorgo, featured a giant sea monster heralded by the appearance of strange deep-sea fish. This monstrous foreshadowing would be referenced as recently as 2023 in Takashi Yamazaki's Oscar-winning epic Godzilla -1. Now, Gorgo was Leurier's final film as director, and while he might not have made much of an impact as a director, he remained a prolific production designer and art director. In 1927, he was the art director and technical advisor on Abel Gance's silent epic Napoleon. And in the 1930s, he was the production designer on two films by Jean Renoir, The Rules of the Game and Grand Illusion. After Gorgo, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his special effects work on the disaster epic Krakatoa, East of Java. Gorgo's lead actors are Bill Travers and William Sylvester, playing the opportunistic treasure hunter Joe and his first mate Sam. William Sylvester was an American actor who primarily worked in the UK and is most famous for his starring role as Dr. Heywood Floyd in a little-known science fiction film that you might have heard of called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Bill Travers' most famous role also came after Gorgo, when he starred in the conservationist drama Born Free. Now, in Gorgo, Travers' character essentially becomes a callous wildlife trafficker, which is the polar opposite of his role in Born Free, which inspired him to become a dedicated animal rights activist in his own life. Together with his wife and Born Free co-star Dame Virginia McKenna, Travers founded the Born Free Foundation, which exists to this day under the stewardship of Travers and McKenna's son, Will Travers. Scottish child actor Vincent Winter plays Sean, a wise beyond his years boy from Gorgo's home of Nara Island. Before Gorgo, Winter had notably appeared in The Dark Avenger alongside Errol Flynn, but his acting career didn't prosper much beyond the mid-1960s. He would, however, go on to have an illustrious career as a production manager, working on Superman 2 and 3, Roger Moore's fifth Bond film For Your Eyes Only, and the notorious Cutthroat Island, to name just a few. Vincent Winter also worked on a few Steven Spielberg films, including The Colour Purple, and the second film starring the patron saint of Archaeo-Heritage film, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The connection between Steven Spielberg, Vincent Winter and Gorgo, however, is further cemented by the climax of 1997's The Lost World Jurassic Park. Now, like Gorgo, Spielberg's sequel also features a giant reptilian parent rampaging through a major mainland city in order to rescue its child, who has been stolen away and transported via boat from their island home. We know Spielberg does know of Gorgo, even if he doesn't seem to think too much of it.
Get people to say, gee, this is the first time I've really seen a dinosaur. This isn't Gorgo, this isn't Godzilla.
So we have to wonder if maybe Vincent Winter had regaled Spielberg with stories of working on Gorgo as a child while he worked as his production manager, and if Gorgo was indeed on Spielberg's mind during the production of The Lost World. In something of a full circle moment, Gorgo would be unofficially remade in Japan in 1967 as Gappa, the Triphibian monster, which featured a mated pair of reptilian bird monsters rescuing their own child, kidnapped from their South Seas island home and brought to Japan. I'd also recommend seeking out the short film Waiting for Gorgo, which lightheartedly explores what the bureaucratic response to a giant monster rampage might look like decades after the fact. Now, Gorgo is very often touted as the British Godzilla, and it is undeniable that some of its cinematic DNA can be traced back to Japan's finest, but this also erases Gorgo's cultural identity and ignores the subtle historical weight that it carries. Crucially, Gorgo and his mother are Irish, not British. Against his will, Gorgo is separated from his mother and taken to London, recalling the shameful tragedy of forced adoption in Ireland, which saw countless children removed from the custody of single mothers under the cruel belief that unmarried women were unfit to raise children. From the 1940s to the 1980s, these separations were carried out without the consent, or often even the knowledge, of the children's mothers, just as Gorgo is separated from his own mother. The authorities responsible for these separations, primarily the Irish Catholic Church, are represented in the film by McCartan, an unsociable archaeologist and self-serving capitalist who pays Joe and Sam with illegally seized gold in order to capture Gorgo. Like so many of Ireland's lost children, Gorgo is illegally sold and transported to London, where he is held in captivity and displayed as a living archaeological specimen, or corporeal link to prehistory. While many were sent to the UK, some of Ireland's lost children were sold as far as the US, and with this in mind, it's worth noting that Gorgo's captors are an Englishman and an American working under the direction of a secretive Irish authority. It's in London that Gorgo is given his name, a forced assimilation of the more familiar and marketable Greek culture over his own Celtic identity and heritage. Many of Ireland's lost children faced similar forced assimilation and were involuntarily given new identities and names. Thankfully, Gorgo's mammy comes to the rescue. She too is a single mother, notably depicted in the film without a mate. The film positions her as Ogra, a spiritually venerated sea spirit of Irish mythology. In an act of cathartic justice on behalf of the mothers who lost their children to forced adoption, Ogra emerges as a primeval force of nature to wreak havoc upon the colonial institutions and individuals that would separate Ireland's mothers from their children and deny them their culture, heritage, and freedom. Please enjoy.